Alright everybody, we are in the nuclear aftermath of the Western Alliance turn for their response to the mass attacks made by the Eastern Pact. So, first things first, there was a couple of cyber warfare rules that worked out, and diplomacy. You can see that the US aligned Peru, Bolivia, and with my custom setup, they do achieve a decent amount of forces, although they can't really participate in much combat this turn. Furthermore, the only other cyber warfare rule that succeeded, or I guess there was two, we had a base shut down on this Chinese airbase and an American military intel point over there. So, getting into combats, first off, the US will finally, we've been saying it for the past couple turns, but we will kick out the Eastern Pact from South America once and for all, with a mass invasion into Mexico and a smaller invasion over here on the other side of Mexico, supported by air units and a cruise missile. Getting into other combats now, the big problem is that we are running out of units. We can't just go launching attacks willy-nilly with the ever-growing Eastern Pact forces. So, we're basically launching unopposed assaults everywhere across the world. So first off, we have an attack on the Caliphate holding in Spain. So it's just a fighter supported by a drone. It's coming in, there's nothing that can intercept it, so it'll be doing a surgical strike, hopefully knocking out something like an armor. We have the last NATO cruise missile being fired against the Caliphate fleet in hopes of sinking that LHD and securing the Mediterranean for the time being. We've got a mass air assault on those MBTs in Eastern Europe with 3 American fighter jets and 1 NATO jet supported by a drone. Russia will not be scrambling their 1 fighter, as it would likely get lost against 4 fighters. Russia, while it does have some new quality superiority, does not have a large air force it can go spending. NATO is also using a frigate to try to fight that sub, although the sub will get to fire back, so that may or may not be a good attack up there. We have a cruise missile being fired at Somalia by an American sub, and in in Asia as a whole, we have a lot of attacks. First off, the US is firing 2 cruise missiles. China didn't build any units to soak up hits down here in East Asia. Now, the units in India can't move out still, but 3 air units, 2 cruise missiles, hopefully something will be knocked out. A Taiwanese fighter is launching a strategic attack on the Filipino infantry battalion, and we have an Indian fighter supported by a drone launching a tactical, I keep forgetting what they're called, surgical strike on the Indonesian army, which is stationed in Java. Just little softening attacks again, unopposed things to soften up the Chinese for some later assault. We also have 2 Indian subs making themselves useful by trying to hunt down that one of the last 2 Soviet submarine ballistic missile submarines. All right, and getting into up here in the America front, we have a submarine hunter helicopter with a drone, hopefully knocking out that. Now, I just realized too, this with the Chinese, that this West Coast sea zone is extremely important to the Americans, because as you can see, all the American naval bases and the NATO base this is like every American base in the Pacific is located in this zone. So as the Chinese, if you can move anything in there, like a sub or maybe multiple, then you've now blocked off all U.S. sea lift to the Pacific. And then up here we have the big battle. We're risking everything by... We can't let the Chinese sit off the coast of Alaska any longer, and the fact that now the Chinese have 2 fleets, of course this one's more of a minor fleet, but the fact that they have an LHD, they can still amphibiously invade. So we are going to take out, hopefully knock out everything, even if it's a 1-for-1. I think that no Chinese fleet will be better than having a Chinese fleet always opposing mine. And hopefully The battle in Alaska will go a little easier. We have a combined NATO-American offensive into Alaska to knock out the Chinese, and the Chinese did scramble in a fighter with hopes of knocking out land units instead of naval units. So that is all the attacks. As you can see, quite wide-ranging, and other than in the Bering Sea, most of them are unopposed, and hopefully we'll just knock off a few enemy units. So I hope to see you there when the combats have been concluded. Alright everybody, so there has been a resounding success up in the Bering Sea, with the American Navy crushing the Chinese fleet of the Morning Star, and moving into Alaska with only 1 infantry casualty, taking out 2 Chinese tanks, 2 infantry, and a fighter, at the loss of a frigate and a damaged supercarrier. And in this game, damage doesn't affect the movement or abilities of supercarrier, it's just something that's going to have to be repaired, or else that carrier can go down in a hit. So as you can see, Alaska is taken back in force, and the Chinese have had to rebuild their fleet infrastructure. So now you can see we have a new designated fleet down here. Definitely not as glorious as the last, and as the morale of its navy is crushed up in the north with the loss of Alaska. So moving on, we had a successful strike on Java, taking out that infantry. The Taiwanese fighter did not, though, so that fighter will be landing back in Taiwan, and this fighter back on the Indian carrier in the Pacific. I always get those mixed up. The 2 Indian subs that went sub-hunting for that ballistic sub did not get any hits. The 2 American cruise missiles were extremely successful. 1 fighter and attack helicopter are down, and the Chinese Air Force is down to a fighter. That is pretty insane considering that they had one of the strongest in the game. So, one little non-com is that this frigate will join the Indian Task Force. Alright, there's no other non-coms in the Pacific. Oh, and the American invasion of Mexico failed. They did take off the infantry, but they lost their ground support. And non-com, we will be moving down an infantry to hopefully seize that next turn. And this drone and helicopter, actually, they will land in the Hawaiian Islands. It's a bit more central. Alright, moving along. Can't do anything with India until the end of the turn. Alright, all airstrikes in Europe failed, so that, well, not great. We didn't lose any units, so I'm liking that. But I do want to pull back to a central defense. You know, we want to defend these last 3 territories in Europe, but at the same time, I don't want to spread out everything too much. So I think all fighters are coming back to France because they can scramble into Italy, or Italy or Germany if attacked, or France if France is attacked. That drone has to, actually, we'll land that drone back into Germany to help out the infantry defenders there. As I said, all fighters are returning to France. We won't be loading up on any carriers as we want them land-based. We've got a drone for those guys landing back there. The airborne in Denmark, we can't really do, actually we can. We're going to take that LHD, move him out of the Baltic. He's going to come into France as well. So now we can launch some kind of assault on undefended territories, hopefully. 3 infantry, or we'll move 1 guy. Let's do 2 up to Denmark, because actually it's not of huge importance to us, and they can't really launch any sort of major attack against it. So we've got 2 guys in Germany defending the line. We'll be building more later. 4 guys in Italy. At least we have a defense down there. Alright, that is it for NATO. Getting into America. We did take out Mexico, which is nice, and considering that there's 1 Mexican territory left and Russia has the ability to build an infantry there, we don't have to worry about that threat too much. We move into Mexico with 3 infantry, and an MBT. This fighter is going to land in the northwest United States. This helicopter and drone will be landing on the LHD. This frigate will sail around and meet up with that task force out there. We need to make sure that that fleet does not get destroyed, as it is the last major fleet that we have in the Atlantic. I would really like to get that Red Sea fleet out. I think that's the new objective, because a nice free supercarrier is sitting in the Middle East waiting for us to free it still. So hopefully we can get that thing out. In other news, I think that's just about it. I guess we'll get into placement. I did check the rules, and so I guess basically these come off the nuclear blast markers, and you can now place units and collect the IPCs for it. So we've got 2 new MBTs coming in to the United States, or Northwest United States. They're going to hopefully be going to Europe next turn. We have 2 infantry, and now I think that I'm going to be placing 2 into... Actually, we're going to go with 1 into Brazil. And now Brazil, I'm pretty sure that if the rules are right, if you align a territory, so if you capture a territory, you can only build 1 unit in it. But if you align the territory, which the U.S. did, you get the full effect of, 4 infantry and 3 like mechanized, armor class units, stuff like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we only want 1 infantry down there just to defend our gains. We don't want the last little hope, the Caliphate or China or whoever could do is align Argentina, and then we've got to deal with that last threat. Up north, we'll be placing in our other infantry into Panama to, again, defend that territory. We have a lot of empire to protect now that we have most of South America under our grasp. On the Pacific side of things, we have a new frigate going in and helicopter going in to hopefully knock out the last couple subs and add to our fleet. And going on to NATO, we have a new helicopter which is going to go on, let's see, he's going to go, on the LHD, because if the sub comes out to try and launch an attack, although that won't limit his first strike, so maybe we want him in Europe defending. So I think we'll do that instead. The good thing about helicopters is they can support those airborne, so we'll keep him here in the massive France aerodrome and place it down like that so we can see everything. Alright, and we have 6 infantry. We'll do 3 into Germany and 3 into France. So hopefully those guys in Germany can hold the line so that those combined tanks can't just blitz across Europe. So that is it for NATO. And finally, the Pacific Coalition. They can remove their blast markers in Korea and India. They're going to be placing an airborne in India to hopefully threaten some areas nearby, and another 2 infantry in India because we got to get that built up as a threat to the Middle East and Chinese. So that is it. Like I said, not many attacks. This game's kind of cool in the sense that I remember reading about in a how modern military wars could be thought. Like a main theory is that with the further expense of things like fighter jets, tanks, and ordnance, that in a total war scenario, it would become harder and harder to supply those weapon systems to the front lines. And I definitely see this in this game because, you start with so much ordnance and fighters and tanks, but as you start to really lose lots of them, you start just resorting to the basics, just building frigates and infantry to kind of shore up your defenses as you lose those high value targets in the beginning of the game. So I definitely like this, and it's pretty, and the game is very balanced that I've been seeing, although we can see that this game may be going to the Eastern Pact as Europe is in really dire straits right now. So hope to see you in the next video if there is one, and yeah, leave a comment down below or like the video if you enjoyed it. Cobra, out.